Hello folks, hope y'all are doing okay. Making sure that everything's functioning. Alright. Seems to be working okay. Alright, cool. Alright. Well, welcome one and all to the Raven's Roost, where all we do is read stories, my stories that I've written. We are still reading a couple of stories tonight, but we're going to be wrapping up a few. The Tempest Blade being one of them. We are about to be caught up with that, so we'll need to pick a new story for next time after tonight, after we finish Tempest Blade. That'll be awesome. Fair warning, I'm not feeling 100% tonight. I am a little out of it. Nothing serious, I don't think. Just, you know, headache, backache, kind of achy feeling. I think I got, like, maybe the creeping crud or maybe even the nid, but it's nothing serious. Well, we're going to try to muscle through it and have a good time tonight. So let's go ahead and end the poll, see who won. Alright, Shogun of Crime pretty definitively won with 46% of the votes. Monster Club and Tempest Blade tied with 20, and the Tale of Tomoki down at the bottom with 13%. Okay, that is fair. That's about where I expected it to be. Alright, well, we are going to get started with Tempest Blade. We are on Chapter 15, and we will do 15 and 16 tonight. And then we'll be done with Tempest Blade for now until I get more chapters written. So, let's not waste any time. Let me go ahead and put a picture of the Tempest Blade up on the screen so that we all know what we're reading and people coming in will know where we're at. Let me find a a good one. We'll go with this one, because it does have to do with a later chapter. There we go. That's better. All right. Let's go ahead and get started. Tempest Blade, Chapter 15. Gaius never found her that night. He searched for hours, but when he came home early the next morning, he was empty-handed and exhausted. There was no trace of her. I wanted to look too, but Rox and Gaius didn't recommend it. By now, she was probably far from the town and somewhere beyond our reach. Maybe it's for the better, Rox had said. I know you cared about her, but she's not your daughter. I didn't respond to her logic. As far as I was concerned, no, it's better not to think that way. Besides, I had another important matter to consider. My time was up, and I was on my way to meet with the Imperial Highness Gregory, the Prince of the Tigerian Empire. I tried to distract myself on the journey by thinking on better things, but any happy memory I could recollect always seemed to return to one smiling little Lothari child, which would then shift to a look of fear, anger, and betrayal. I was so wrapped up in my thoughts on her that the trip felt like a dream. Every now and then I spin around at the sound of shifting bushes, expecting to see little Anya come running out, only to see a squirrel or a raccoon instead. At one point, I could have sworn I heard her call my name, but it was only my imagination, as I didn't hear it again. In a careful search turned up no trace of her. By the time I reached the Gryjaw Mountains, I was already frustrated and unhappy. But what was about to get worse for me, I could tell just from the way Gregory and his soldiers glared at me how they felt. He was a short fellow. He looked about 19 years old or so in age, only a little younger than Rox. He wore a ceremonial battle robe and a spear in his hand. He was surrounded on all sides by armored musketeers and men with pole arms. None looked kindly on me, and the closer I got, the more viciously they snarled. I was still a traitor to them, no matter what I was here for. Ah, welcome, great traitor for the Empire, Gregory scoffed. So pleased you could make it. What do you want, sire? I asked darkly. What, you're not going to bow before a prince of the Empire? He asked. It was a formality that all lower folks were to bow to the royal family. He wanted to publicly show my weakness compared to him. It told me all I needed to know about Gregory. He was a weakling, a power-scraping, arrogant little ass. He requires public displays of his own power to convince the world and himself that he's not just a fool with no credit to his name, outside of what his own father gave to him at birth. It was time he grew up. I'm a traitor, remember? I have no need to bow to those who seek my head. I could take your head right now if you'd like. I smirked at the threat and held out my sword to him, causing him to flinch back at the sight. Well, go ahead, your highness. I've been ready to die for a long time. Though I am curious to know how you intend to complete your task with me dead, I challenged. The soldiers now all looked at their prince expectantly. The bluff worked, and he waved off the sword. Whatever. I have no need for your manners, only your blade arm. What is it you want? I re-asked, resheathing my sword. The prince sneered, but stood up from his seat and walked a few paces along the mountainside, pointing out towards the western woods. Do you see this long stretch of woodland between here and the western mountain range? Of course. Look beyond the forest and you'll see it, just beyond the horizon. I glared out to the sight. It was a long ways away, at least a 3 days' journey to get there from here, but I could just make out the prison fortress. Tyrannom, I nodded. Lothari forces have taken it, and I believe they are holding humans captive inside. Sending my army would be a waste of resources and men, so I propose a different solution. You go first, and see if you can thin them out for us. If you die, we'll clean up whatever's left. You'll get that death you want so badly. I turned an eye towards Gregory and didn't tell him what I already knew. The truth was that an army of his size stood no chance breaching the walls of Tyrannom, especially if it was well defended. A single soldier might slip through easier, but unless he was skilled, it wouldn't mean anything. He was too afraid to risk his own skin. But this is what I'd agreed to. I'd promised the Emperor I'd help his child see through this trial. No turning back now. Fine. It'll take me 3 days to walk there from here. Why not take a horse? Too conspicuous. Plus, these forests are treacherous. The Lothari call this valley Finn Blycarn, which means winter trees. The air here is unnaturally wet and cold, meaning it snows here almost year-round. Caring for a horse in that environment would not be ideal. You'll just have to wait for me to cross on foot. Shall I assign a few men to accompany you? He asked. Afraid I'll run away with my tail between my legs? I asked. I will not be watched by your mongrel dogs. I will deal with that fortress my own way and without babysitters. I shot a dangerous glare back at him, daring him to argue. If I see anyone following me, be they your men or theirs, I'll slaughter them. Gregory didn't respond to this, but just gave a slight shudder before nodding. We'll go around the valley. It'll take us 5 days. We'll see what you make of the fortress in that time. I can't wait, I replied, starting my trek down the mountain. I trust you won't disappoint me, Tempest, he called out to me. I didn't answer, but kept walking. There was no more words I needed to exchange with a worm like him. Gregory was nothing like his father, and that was most disappointing. The snow hit without warning and without mercy. I wrapped my arms around my chest and kept on walking. I had only a satchel of bread and cheese to eat. Any meat would have to be hunted. I didn't mind this. I'd hunted before to get by. These woods were dripping with mystery and power like I'd not felt in years. The Lithari used to call this forest home. I saw a few trees and rocks with runes etched into them, which meant the Lithari magic was strong here. Maybe that was the reason behind the snow. Regardless, I kept trekking through the woods, my boots soaked and my hair flapping in my face with each strong wind. As I walked, I occasionally heard the sound of footsteps following me. I would glance back and catch the sight of at least one or two images dart behind trees or bushes. Gregory's lackeys, all coming to make sure I didn't wimp out. What use was there in doing that? I was in this for the long haul. I didn't have any reason to say no. At night, I stopped and set up a small fire and sat down on a stone to relax. I pulled my sword from my sheath and lay it across my lap to clean the steel. The blade, long, straight, and black, felt heavy in my lap. It was sharp, hungry to be used and to slice. The handle was old and worn in place. But this was hardly surprising as I'd used it so long, and my father had been so meticulous in my using it. I could still remember those long days and nights of training, correcting my posture, testing my reflexes, striking me in the calves or arms if my legs or stance were not in the right position. And then he'd spar with me. And my father never believed in holding back. Your foes will never hold back in the battlefield, so why the hell should we? Hit me with all you have or throw away your sword now. Of course, his sword was wooden. He wouldn't never seriously kill me. In a twisted way, I could feel my father's love in each blow he delivered. Each taunt he threw was a bizarre way of encouraging me. Father was always there, always leading me. The day I was old enough to craft my own sword, he showed me how and asked me to choose the steel that I used. The steel of your sword must suit you, he had told me. He laid out a couple of blocks of steel in front of me. I, of course, had been taught about the different kinds of steel and swords and asked him which one was which, but he refused to answer. Don't choose based on knowledge, but instinct. Analyze each steel type with your heart, and tell me which one you wish to use in your sword. I sat in front of those blocks for almost 30 minutes, thinking and thinking, until at last I reached out and touched one. Its black finish was glorious to me. I felt a strange reverberation from it I didn't get from the others, and I finally gazed up at my father, who just grinned knowingly without explanation. Then you shall wield a black blade. Then came the forging itself. Stuck next to a hot forge and constantly pounding and folding steel, I was lectured by my father again and again on how to hold the hammer, when to pull the steel out. Every single movement was a chore, and yet the finished product was something only he and I could have completed together. I felt my father's love and passion in this sword. To even let it be chipped would be nothing short of an insult to his memory. It was our treasure that we'd forged together. Anya, I whispered, what treasures did you and your father forge? Is that why you fled from me that night? Because I tore you away from the man who meant the world to you, and then I callously step in to fill his shoes like he's easily replaceable? How would I have felt if someone had stepped in to fill the role of my father after he passed? The very thought boiled my blood. No, I understand, Anya. You have every right to loathe me, to despise me as I despise myself. I held the blade up over the fire so its glow ignited the steel of the blade in a shine that was the envy of even the stars. And when I meet you again, Anya, I pray you're strong enough to hold a blade, I whispered. And when you are, I will let you run me through with this one. It was my treasure, the only item I valued over everything else. When my father grew sick and weak, when he knew he wasn't going to recover, I found him in the training hall, his own sword deep in his chest, in a note for me left behind to explain himself. I never read it. I kept it sealed and locked away in my room. Maybe because I didn't want to understand it. I didn't then, but I do now. To fail your child is the greatest dishonor, and failing you can ever hope to achieve. And I had failed mine. The only reason I didn't end it now is because Anya's not ready. No, she's not ready, and so neither am I. Anya, I will make this right, even if it's with my own blood. All right. Now moving on to chapter 16. All right, we're all set. Everyone's nice and quiet in chat, a little surprising. All right, let's jump right in. Chapter 16, written June 28th, 2020. The forest was brutal, unkind, and vicious. Wolves seemed to haunt every step through the frozen wilderness, and even when the snow fell upon my shoulders, I heard the sound of paws pattering through the thick, snowy ground. But when they got too close, I'd stop and draw my sword, and the sight of it seemed to keep them at bay. I wasn't excited about this mission, but more than anything, I just wanted to go home and hopefully find Anya again. Where was she now? Was she afraid? Angry? Maybe she got back to a Lothari village. Would they keep her safe? So many questions filled my mind, and try as I might to put them aside and focus on the task in front of me, I could not. I was still a day's journey to Terranum, and the fortress I was to sneak inside, so it was pointless to slow down, but traveling at night in these woods was a fatal error. I paused a moment and leaned against a tree, looking up at the sky to see the sun setting off not far beyond me. I was going to the right direction, but this was as far as I could go tonight. With the sun going down, the temperature would drop exponentially, and that would be fatal. I sat down under a tree, where the branches could catch some of the snow that was raining down, and I took time to breathe as my lungs burned from breathing in the freezing air all day. I closed my eyes a moment to relax and recollect my thoughts and mind. I didn't have to think about Anya. I had to think about the best way to deal with the Lothari renegades at Terranum. What would be the best way to enter the fortress without being seen? I'd never been there myself, so I didn't know its structural weaknesses are opening well. It's possible I could just get lucky. Maybe there was a tunnel or underground passage that could... Damn, I'm losing my mind, I muttered to myself. I glanced at my sword a moment and drew it from its sheath, holding its black blade out in front of me to gaze at it again. I'd owned it so long I knew every inch of it, every subtle difference in the quality and the make of the blade. I found that when I gazed at it and truly let my mind wander, it almost had its own voice at times, like it could speak to me, to ask me something. Though it sounded insane for one to converse with his own sword, perhaps it's not as insane as it seems. A sword is a part of yourself. When you train with it long enough, and does one not speak to himself in times of confusion and need? Was it so different? In either case, I would gaze upon the blade now, its black sheen gazing at me coldly and with a cunning glare. It stared into my very soul. Why do you live in the past? It seemed to ask me. Your father took his life because he had no more life in him to offer. You slew your enemies in war. You slew Anya's father because you had to. Dwelling on her and how you could have done any different will not change the truth. Steel is cold, I reminded myself. It is unfeeling, it is unyielding, and it shows no mercy. I suppose not even to its master. Whether tactful or not, fact is fact, even. What is, is. What was, was. So you must live for what is now and leave what was where it remains. If you focus only on the past, your future will strike you from behind. But if I don't understand my own choices, how can I be a father to Anya? You killed her father. You are not, nor can you ever be her. I immediately sheathed the blade, unwilling to stare at it any longer. The more I did, the more the pain grew in my heart. I lay my sword at my side and tried to drift into blissful sleep, praying that I would feel better with the morning light. I heard rustling not far from me moving in the bushes, the sound of growling wolves and hungry beasts. I opened an eye and grabbed my sword, expecting to see the beasts out and moving towards me. However, I didn't see any wolves in the open. I looked around, still hearing them, and then I heard whimpering, the sound of an animal being hunted. The wolves had found new prey to stalk, and I looked to see what it was. A rabbit came bolting out of the bushes with 2 wolves in hot pursuit. I watched it bounce and leap frantically to escape the jaws and paws of the hungry dogs, but I didn't move. This was nature. The wolves would eat what they were meant to, and the rabbit must use its instincts and speed to survive. As the rabbit bounded past the clearing back into the tree line, I saw a tall figure stir from behind the tree, and this time I moved, drawing my sword. "Who goes there?" I shouted. The figure, who had been moving to avoid the wolves, sprinted back into the woods, back in the direction I'd been traveling from, meaning he was likely Prince Gregory's lackey come to check on my progress. Part of me wanted to chase him down and butcher him, as I promised Gregory I would. But that would be too much energy, and the night was still young. Wasting energy for something so trivial would be a bad idea. I just sat back down. "You come back here again and I'll gut you like a fish." I sighed and looked back at the now fallen snow, and suddenly realized that the rabbit had apparently gotten away as the wolves were slinking away in disappointment. I watched them go and shrugged. That's nature. I quickly bundled myself up and prepared to slip back into sleep again, longing for the warmth of dreams. No sooner had I closed my eyes when suddenly the wolves got excited and bounded off into the bushes again, causing me to open my eyes. I listened, wondering what got them excited, and heard the faintest sound of movement in the snow. Not 4 legs, but 2 this time. Something on 2 legs. "Another one of you!" I sneered. "You fools don't know when to quit. I told you not to follow me!" This time I'd show no mercy. If the wolves didn't get him first, I would. I jumped from my resting spot and ran from the clearing to kill the follower. There I saw 4 wolves surrounding the figure, cowering by a tree and shivering. I pulled my sword from its sheath and ran forward, ready to strike the killing blow, when I noticed the figure was not one of Gregory's men, and she was certainly not who I wanted to draw my sword against. Her tiny body was shivering near naked in the snow. Her fingers blue, her face pale. The wolves were licking their chops and trying to bite at her as he pointed ears jittered from the freezing wind, and her black hair was matted to her head with sweat. "Anya!" I cried. She looked up at me, and her expression was a mixture of fear and relief. My sword instantly changed targets, and I swung down on the nearest wolf. With a yelp of pain, I severed its head from its shoulders and kicked the next one away. The sight of their dead comrade drove the bravery from the dogs as they sprinted away from my sight and into the woods, intent to search for easier food. I then dropped down next to Anya, whose leg had been bitten by the wolf, leaving it to bleed. I started to reach for her, but she pulled away fast. "No!" she screamed. I stopped short, her scream cutting me deeper than any sword had ever done. I stared at her. She couldn't run from me, but I couldn't touch her. I couldn't hold her the way she needed me to, or the way I wanted to. I pulled back slightly and looked at her with shame. "Anya, what are you doing here? Don't you know how far you are from Eaton?" she whispered. "Eaton, why?" she whimpered, still shivering. I needed to help her. I needed to hold her, but she wouldn't let me get any closer than I was. She looked at me as if I'd been the one to do this to her, like I was the wolf who had bitten her. And I might as well have. I bowed my head to her and took off my cloak, holding it out. "Please, Anya, put this on. Warm yourself." I'm sure she would have refused if another cold wind hadn't prompted her to accept me swiftly and snatch the rag from my hands. As she wrapped herself in my cloak, I watched her start to calm down. No longer shaking. No longer shaking. I then spoke slowly and carefully. "Anya, I am so sorry. I didn't know that you were..." I couldn't finish the sentence. Just looking at her was torture. She stared at the ground, glancing up at me from time to time, sniffing and trembling. But I don't think it was just the cold causing it. Now wasn't the time to talk like this. But as I tried to slide closer to her, my knees now soaked from kneeling in the snow, my own body freezing without any cloak, I could see she was in no position to cooperate. If we didn't talk now, then we'd never move forward. "Eaton, you are Tempest?" she asked. "Yes." "You killed Papa," she choked. I winced and bowed my head again. "I did," I answered. Never had 2 words felt so heavy before in my entire life. Anya tensed up and her eyes squinted closed as tears rolled down her cheeks. I wanted to run to her and embrace her, but knew she wouldn't let me. I had no idea how to approach her now except to sit there in agony and watch her suffer.
Why? Why you do it? Why you kill him?
She cried. Because he wanted me to, I answered without thinking, without even considering if that's what she needed to hear. I immediately regretted it as she began to cry harder. Anya, your father dueled me knowing he wouldn't live. He wanted to die so the war would end faster. I didn't want to kill Elijah, Anya. He saved my life. He was the finest swordsman I ever fought, and... Anya, please, I can never forgive myself for what I did to him and to you. I bowed lower and suddenly heard her move. She dragged herself to me on her injured leg and began hitting me on the head with her tiny fists. Hitting me for all she was worth, crying and screaming in anguish and pain.
You lie! You're a liar, Ethan! You lie! You lie!
She screamed and hit me with all she had. They didn't leave any bruises, but I'd never felt anything more painful. And yet, I was somehow reminded of my own father's training blows, the way he hit me in our duels. They were meant to hurt, but there was always something behind them. A strike of affection, of love. And somehow I felt something similar in these little punches. She didn't actually want to hurt me. I didn't stop her, though. I let her hit me all she wanted. After a few minutes, she finally broke down, falling on her injured leg, and I caught her, placing my hands on her to keep her from falling over. Anya, I didn't lie to you. I wanted to tell you after I learned. I wanted to tell you the truth, but I was scared. Scared of this, scared of hurting you, I assured her. And killing your father was the worst thing I'd ever done until now, Anya. I regret every day that what I did on that bridge. Anya was still crying, but she wasn't fighting anymore. She didn't look at me, and I could sense that she was beyond broken now. She was simply shattered. I knew there was only one thing I could do for her. One final act I could offer. I drew my black blade and looked at it as if once again reaching into my soul. Is this your decision? The blade seemed to ask. Anya, I spoke, ignoring the premonition. Look at me. Anya's eyes finally glanced up to me and the sword in my hands, and she shrank back from it, like I might strike her with it. I lowered it some to show it wasn't meant for her. My father helped me forge this sword. I made it when I was only a little older than you. It's my life. It's everything that I am. It's the same sword that I took to the war, and this is the same sword that killed your father. That last bit caught her attention more than anything else I said. I then turned it around so the handle was held out to her. She gazed at it in a moment and then bowed my head. Nothing I can do can bring him back. But Anya, you are more important to me than anything. Even this sword. So I want you to take it. Take it and kill me with it. Then you can do with it what you want. Anya's eyes widened in disbelief, and the tears stopped flowing as I held the sword out to her, the tip aimed square at my chest. All she needed to do was take it and run me through. She reached out with her hands trembling and small, taking the heavy sword handle in them and gripping it tightly. As she took the sword, I let it go and undid my chest armor to make it easier, exposing my bare chest to her, the cold biting my chest and hair and making me wince. I love you, Anya. And I am so sorry for what I did to you. Anya stood there, the tip of my sword aimed at my chest, her eyes wide and gazing into mine as I looked at her. Her hands shook wildly, and I felt the tip dig a little in my skin. It hurt, but I didn't care. I was ready. Anya shook her head slowly, mouthing something in Lothari. She was rationalizing now, and I closed my eyes, ready to take the blow. She screamed. The sword hit the snow, and I suddenly felt the weight of a small object slam into my body. I gasped and looked down to see Anya holding on to me, gripping me with all her might and wailing into my chest.
No die, Ethan. No die, please. You promise you never leave me alone. You promise. Ethan, don't leave, please.
I stared down at her, feeling her small form and the heat of her tears on my chest. I finally wrapped my arms around her and cried into her hair as I felt the weight of compassion replace the weight of guilt. I'm not going to leave you. I'll stay by your side forever. It'll be all right. I kissed her head and held on to her as she screamed, the snow raining down on us like Elijah's tears from the heavens. I had no right to call myself Anya's caretaker, but if that is what Anya wanted, if that's what she needed, then my sword was hers, as was my life. And that is the end of Tempest Blade as far as I've written it. So you're all caught up. Woohoo. All right. Let's go ahead and take this down. That's the end for now? Yeah, that's the end for now. I don't have any more written. To be perfectly honest, one of the main reasons why I haven't written more is because, honestly, I don't know where to take it now. I've got an idea, but I feel like I've kind of wrapped it up. Like, the whole point of Tempest Blade was about their relationship. And since I kind of cleaned up that, it's kind of like, well, what more can I do? So, I need to think about that. It's a real question. All right. Well, moving on to the Tale of Tomoki. Raven showed. Oh yeah, that's right. Hannah wants me to show you guys her Anya picture. One second. Hannah drew a lovely picture of Anya. Here you go. I'll let you guys enjoy that for a minute. So everyone inspired Tempest? Lots of things. Lots of things inspired it. Alright, well let's go ahead and take that down. Before I forget, let me go ahead and share Hannah's other big picture. One moment. Hannah drew another picture, which I think we need to share. Daikon. Because I didn't have an official picture for him yet other than what I created with an AI. So now you have your Daikon image. He's the villain of this current arc. But Daikon, as you know, has run off for now to do his own thing, so we won't see him for a little while. Alright, well, and we'll leave that up there for now while we read the next chapter. The Tale of Tomoki, chapter 26. Let's do it. Daikon landed far off from Shan City. He sneered and rubbed his cheek where Tomoki had struck him. It stung, and it felt like his jaw had been popped loose slightly. He spat on the ground and adjusted his scouter. That annoying weakling. Thinking he could possibly challenge me, Daikon hissed. But he's not hopeless. There's something about that brat. I'll give him some time to stew before I try him again. In the meantime, he glanced around, picking up various low readings, when suddenly his scouter beeped loudly, encouraging him to look up at the sky. 5 impressive power levels are coming, and one even larger than the other 4. At least 200,000 each. A grin slid across his face as he realized their trajectory. It seems they'll get to fight that useless excuse for a Saiyan first. Well, that should be excellent practice for him. Perhaps What the? Daikon spun around as he felt something else coming. It wasn't far behind the 5 power levels from earlier. 2 of them. What are those? This power level's bizarre. It's not normal energy. Daikon started to head in that direction when he stopped himself and snorted. Not worth it. They're going to collide in Shan City, and I just left that place. I'll come back another time and see what's become of it. In the meantime, I'm curious about another reading I've been getting. Daikon turned to the north, where there was a strange fluctuation of power. A power that he hadn't felt in this rock or anywhere else. It wasn't strong, but it wasn't typical energy. It was something more monstrous. What secrets does this planet hide? He chuckled. Maybe I wrote this world off too quickly. Come on, planet Earth. Show me a good time. It seems there's a lot more fun to be had yet. I sat on the step of the dojo. Sitting next to me on one side was Melody, who was treating my injuries, but Victoria sat on my other side. Master Hayato simply stood in front of me with his arms crossed. He was really that powerful? He asked. I've never fought anyone that strong before, Master. He was even stronger than Mamaragon, and he probably wasn't even going all out. That's the power of a real Saiyan. You're a Saiyan too, Victoria noted. No, you're a Super Saiyan. Why didn't you transform to fight him? There were still innocents nearby. I couldn't risk harming them. That, and I still don't have any control of that form. I shook my head and looked down at my feet. I was pathetic. Yes, that's a fair statement, Hayato agreed. Hey, Melody answered. You weren't there. Yeah, I'm sure Tomoki gave it all he had, Victoria said. But he still lost, Hayato snarled. Which means that Daikon is now confident there's no one on this earth who can stop him from doing as he pleases. But this could also be our best advantage. Really? I asked. If Daikon thinks you're his inferior, then he'll underestimate you next time you fight. Which means you can surprise him with your real power, Hayato pointed out. But to do that, you need some additional training, boy, and sooner rather than later. I growled and thought back to my conversation with Daikon. The things he'd said. Daikon told me things. Like what? He said that a Saiyan grows stronger after every battle. We learn from combat and get stronger, I explained. Well, that makes sense, Melody agreed. You're definitely a lot tougher than when I fought you. And you've done a lot since then. But he said I wasn't ready yet. He wants me to kill people like he does. He says that's how Saiyans get stronger. There was a long silence over the group. You aren't considering that, are you? Victoria asked. No, of course not, but if he's right, then what does that mean about me? Am I just the seed of a race of monsters? Is my entire race nothing more than a bunch of mad killers? Whatever they are isn't who you are, Hayato barked. You're not them, and you don't have to be. Even if every other Saiyan is a killer, that doesn't make you one. He also mentioned my mother. My real mother. Hayato's eyes widened and even Victoria stopped moving. Her name is Solera. Kid, he was trying to mess with your mind, get you distracted. But if he knows my mom and dad, if he knows who they are, maybe I could... Tomoki, Belle may not have been your real mother, but she died trying to keep you from becoming a monster. Even if he does know them, and could even introduce you to your real parents, what would you do? Throw away everything here to go back to them? Doesn't a child have the right to meet his parents? I asked. I don't know what I'll do when I meet them, Solera and whoever my dad is, but I just want to see them. Know who I came from. Why they got rid of me. Was it because I'm weak? Tomoki, don't beat yourself up, Victoria encouraged. You're not weak. You're powerful. More powerful than anyone I know. You'll get stronger in no time. I know you will. I smiled at her and wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close in a gentle hug. Thanks, Victoria. I appreciate it. Wait. Do you hear that? Melody asked. Something's coming and fast. I don't hear any. I stopped talking the instant I began to hear a loud roaring sound. Something enormous was moving forward and fast through the sky. I looked up in the air just in time to see a large metal monstrosity come soaring overhead. I leapt to my feet, forgetting the pain in my chest as I doubled over for a moment. Ow! What on earth? More aliens? Victoria squeaked. The question is, are they here to cause trouble? Melody hissed. I'm going to go find out. I'm coming too, I insisted. Are you sure? Victoria asked. You're still not fully recovered. I have to. I can't let these injuries slow me down. I'm a hero, right? Though I said that, it wasn't what I was really thinking. I was thinking about Daikon, about if such injuries would slow him down. If I was going to surpass him, I needed to be extraordinary, beyond anything I was before. I had to become a real Saiyan. I flew to the side of the landing where a large UFO sat waiting in the center of Shan, with people gathering all around to get a look at the strange new transportation device. I landed close to it, and people, recognizing me, all stepped away a moment. Some glad I was there, others not sure how to feel. I was used to this sentiment, and I wasn't too concerned about it right now. Melody stepped out of the crowd too, having sprinted the whole way. Her speed was as impressive as ever. We both approached the craft and readied ourselves for what would appear. The hatch lifted ever so ominously, and out stepped 5 figures. One was tall and extremely fat, with a blubbery body and thick, tree-trunk-like arms. It had a large and evil eye and green skin. It was revolting to look at. Another was short and thin, with blue skin, and wearing a strange cloth around its head, with bandages and ropes coiled around its hands and shoulders. It had pointed ears and sharp teeth, and was grinning from ear to ear. Another was a female, with black hair combed into a feminine-looking mohawk style that folded over one side. She wore tight leather-style clothing, and from her rear, a long tail could be seen. Her body was a reddish hue, and her eyes were a deep yellow with no pupils. Beside her stood a muscular man with blue skin, similar to the short alien. His eyes were even the same black color. He had a small beard, and he wore a vest that exposed his chest and abs. Strapped to his back was a massive blade of some sort. But the most intimidating of them stood behind them, and next to the fat one. He was the second tallest, and also sported impressive muscles. His jaw was large, and his eyes were sharp and sinister. He had dark skin and no hair on his head other than a small goatee on his chin. He wore a large belt around his middle and a necklace of what appeared to be several ears and fangs. And the necklace was made of some sort of fur that looked familiar. I couldn't place it, though. That necklace material. Where have I seen it before?
Ah, what a welcoming committee, the short one laughed. Can we say hi? Maybe have a little party?
Silence, Tuka, the one with the necklace snarled. Clearly he was their leader. His eyes fell upon Melody and I, and we both readied ourselves. Ratma, are those two worth our time? The tall, blue-skinned one stepped forward and held his finger to his forehead and closed his eyes. I felt a strange energy wash over me for a brief moment, and then Ratma sighed. One isn't a living organism, sir. The other does have a high power level, but otherwise, not much, sir. Pity. Then Daikon has moved on. Daikon! I shouted, suddenly remembering my voice. You know Daikon? I asked. The leader glanced at me with a raised eyebrow. Is he still here? Why do you want to find him? I asked. Are you friends of his? The fat one laughed loudly, his fat belly jiggling like jello. Saiyans don't have friends, he chuckled. No, but we are here to know him better, the leader scoffed. We are the Galactic Poachers, and our only interest on this useless rock is the Saiyan Daikon. We're here for his head and his tail. I suddenly realized what the necklace on the leader's neck reminded me of. That furry substance. It was just like my tail. That necklace was constructed from the tails of Saiyans. This man, this thing, he was capable of killing Saiyans. If you stay out of our way, we'll not harm you. Intentionally, anyway, he announced. Tomiki, do we engage? Melody asked. At the sound of my name, the girl looked at me closely. Tomiki, that name sounds familiar. It's a Saiyan name. She stared at me, and suddenly her eyes widened at the sight of my swaying tail. Ratma, I thought you said this one's power level wasn't anything worthwhile. That boy is a Saiyan. Ratma flushed and rounded on her. Shut up, Nix. He must be able to hide his energy is all. Both of you shut up, the leader hissed angrily. Both stopped bickering immediately and went rigid, terrified of the anger of their leader. Either way, this is quite a surprise. Boy, are you really a Saiyan? I wasn't sure what to say for a moment. Yes, I was a Saiyan, but after my fight with Daikon, did I have the right to call myself one? I lacked the power of a Saiyan, the skill of a Saiyan. The only proof I had that I was one was my tail and the fact that I could power up to Super Saiyan. Tomiki, Melody asked, noticing my silence.
Tomiki, are you okay?
Guess we're a bit of a surprise to him. He's definitely not our target. The one known as Daikon would have attacked us the minute he laid eyes on us. This one is a Saiyan, but not on the same caliber as Daikon. I felt a spark light up in my stomach at the insult. Oh, it was indeed an insult. I gritted my teeth and felt my ki rise like a rushing wave. I would not let that go unchallenged. I was not to be so easily discarded. Never! Hey! I shouted. You want a Saiyan tail? Then try me first. Melody gave a smile and turned her attention back to our foes. The leader shrugged his shoulders in an aggravatedly bored way. Whatever you want, kid. It's your move, he said, gesturing at me and Melody in his cocky manner. We stared each other down, daring the other side to move first. My mind was already playing out every scenario I could go at them with. Maybe a Kamehameha, or maybe a direct reject. What if I tried the Python Ballista? All those techniques worked great on Daikon, but then I remembered. It kept flashing in my eyes how I'd been knocked down by him, how I'd lost to him, how he'd overcome me each time. Could I win? Was I strong enough? I felt myself hesitating, felt myself doubting. Snap out of it, snap out of it. Hold it right there. Oh, what now? The leader of the poachers snapped. Everyone turned their attention to the far side of the crowd where two figures were making their way forward. Both were clad in identical full-body armor that looked like something straight from a science fiction video game. Pitch black with blue, pulsing veins and lights flashing from different points. The two armored warriors stepped into the center of the action and both pulled out strange Inner-City-style swords from their belts, aiming them at both the poachers and at myself. I tried to get a feel on their energy, but it was strange. There was energy there, but not exactly what I was expecting. Their energy I was getting. It wasn't ki. It was something else. Were they aliens too? In the name of the Galactic Patrol, Special Unit Division, all of you are under arrest. Do not resist.
And that was chapter 26. Oh, I got a text. I'll check that real quick while y'all reply. Okay, we're good. All right, let's get going. The Tale of Tomiki, Chapter 27. Galactic what? Melody asked. The poacher just sneered in their direction. Should have known those worthless patrollers would be on our tail. Rotma sneered at them. Master Vokon, what do we do? He asked. The leader, Master Vokon, just glared from Tomiki and Melody to the poachers. He simply sighed and crossed his arms. We're done here we're only here for Daikon. That is our prey. Then let me devour them, Master Vokon. The fat one laughed, his mouth drooling hungrily. I'm really hungry. Let me have these weaklings.
Your ravenous nature is a disgusting, Joga,
Nix hissed, wrinkling her nose. If you want them, Joga, have your fun. But we're going on ahead. Ratma, you are to break from the group and begin your search for Daikon. If you find him, do not engage. Simply wait for us to regroup and inform us of his location. You're no match for him on your own. As you command, Master Vokon, he nodded. And as for you, Joga, eat your fill, but do not underestimate your prey. Vokon finished. Poachers, move out! The four remaining poacher aliens all leapt into the air, flying off the same way I often did. I snarled as they flew away, ready to give chase.
Tomiki, watch it!
Melody screamed. I glanced up just in time to see the obese monster that was Joga appear in front of me at mind-boggling speed and strike at my face. I leapt away from the lunging strike and got distance from it. You shouldn't be so distracted, Saiyan. I'm gonna gobble you up.
We'll see about that, big guy, I snapped. Melody, go ahead and chase after those poacher guys, if you can. I'll handle this one.
All right, but just be careful, Tomaki.
Both of you stay where you are. Melody and I both looked at the two armored Galactic Patrol people. You are both wanted for questioning. Allow us to contend with this criminal ourselves, Vitalan instructed. I just sneered and looked at Melody. I'm sorry, did you just hear something? I asked.
Nope, nothing important, Melody answered.
Neither did I. Go, be safe, I shouted as Melody sprinted after the poachers. Yadrin, the tall patroller muttered. The shorter patroller nodded and shot after Melody like a bullet. I made a move to intercept the armored rocket, but was blocked by another swing from the fat Joga.
Melody!
Pay attention, morsel! I suddenly felt the massive fist of Joga smash into my side, and I was flung backwards into a car, creating a massive dent in the steel side. I climbed to my feet shakily and built up my ki. You tubby lump of lard! Try this! I fired my strongest Kamehameha blast at the beast, intent to watch him get vaporized on the spot. But to my shock, Joga opened his mouth wide and began eating the blast. I instantly broke the blast and stared in disgust and horror as Joga smacked his lips and laughed, his large, beady eyes glaring me down in mocking hunger. That was pretty tasty, Saiyan. Got any more for me? What the hell are you? I gasped. He's a glottamonian, the armored patroller answered, walking next to me carefully and professionally. They are a gluttonous race of aliens who feed on energy and power and then add that power to their own. Your ki blast will do little to him other than strengthen him. So I guess you're an alien too? I hissed. As are you, Saiyan. Reserve your criticism and questions for later. Right now I fear I'll need your assistance. My power is not sufficient to handle this beast. I'll need backup. And go call off your partner and have her back you up. I'm not your friend, I snapped back. Most glottamonians are very slow and sluggish creatures, but the way he moved earlier revealed that this one has consumed a lot of energy already. He's far stronger than most I've seen. I sent my partner after your friend because she is in no way ready for this kind of opponent. Hopefully you are a bit more skilled? Just don't get in my way, Captain Tin Can, I growled. Stop talking, Joga shouted. I hunger! He darted forwards with a surprising speed for one so big. Saiyan, attack his stomach with all you've got, the patrol ordered. Why? I shouted. I had no time to wait for that answer. I had to make a split-second decision. I had to either trust this guy or do things my way. And with the speed that Joga was coming at me, I needed to make that choice now. Fine. Reject! I lunged forward and fired my highly focused ki blast right into the stomach of the beast, causing an eruption of power and stopping the overweight monster in his tracks. Ugh, it grunted, clutching its stomach. You dumb piece of... I looked up just in time to see the patroller leap into the air and slam his fist down on Joga's head, smashing it almost completely into his blubbery body, and then back out, blood dripping from his nose and ear. He then landed next to me, his helmet hiding his face, so I could practically feel the smile behind it. Good hit, Saiyan. My name is Tomaki. Very well, and mine is Hosha, he answered. That still doesn't make me your ally, nor I yours. But for now, I think we have little choice but to trust each other. Joga was getting back on his feet, and he was fuming. He raised both of his chubby hands and began firing rapid ki blasts as fast as he could. Die, you little pest! Hosh and I both leapt back, dodging the incoming blast with relative ease. I found an opening and charged with all my speed. I struck Joga in the side hard, only to find that my fist sank into the flesh. What? Joga laughed as he swatted me away with his free hand. I felt the pain as he struck, and then crushing shock of hitting another bus, knocking it over with my collision. It's no good. Their kind have bodies that absorb physical damage like a sponge, Hosha shouted. I got up and rubbed my bleeding cheek, spitting on the ground. Crap. This guy's bizarre. How do I hurt him? You don't! I looked up to see Joga above me, coming down like a belly flopper off the high dive. I dove out of his way and spun around to face him quickly. Just as I landed and began to catch my breath, he opened his mouth and fired an intense ki blast from his mouth. I jumped again to get away, and Hosha dodged just as fast, running in the opposite direction. I'm gonna eat you. Then I'll go to the next town and the next, eating everyone. I'll kill you first, I snapped. Calm down, Tomaki, Hoshi ordered. That reject attack you used earlier was good. Can you do it again? Of course I can, I replied. Then I have a plan, Hoshi whispered, approaching me and leaning close so Joga couldn't hear. You two plotting something? It's useless. He sprinted at us with that same lightning speed of his, and I was forced to dodge. You sure that's gonna work? I shouted. Yes, Hosha chuckled. Trust me on this. I rebounded off the ground. I dodged too, and rocketed towards Joga at a maddening speed. I struck him hard in the chest, and once again felt my fist simply get absorbed into layers of fat. But I didn't let up. I punched again and again and again and again. My arms were a blur of motion as I punched faster and faster. Despite my punches sinking into his body, he was actually beginning to move back. He was being pressured. "It ain't gonna work," Joga laughed. "Your dumb punches ain't got nothing on me." "Am I punching you?" I asked. "Or is he just keeping your attention?" Hosha suddenly leapt up behind Joga and pulled back his hand as a bright green energy built into his fist. He opened his hand and aimed it directly at Joga's head in the same instant, firing a brilliant green light at him. It struck him in the back. The fat around his body began to absorb the shot, but in doing so, my own fist was being repelled. His fat was thick, but not thick enough to absorb both of us at the same time. I saw the opening Hosha had made and slammed my hand forcefully against the chest, and then shoved my other hand against it too. "Reject!" I shouted, releasing the concentrated ki blast directly into his exposed chest. Without any fat to stop the blow, the ki blast found its intended target. Joga screamed in pain as his internal organs were rocked by the shot. I followed up and climbed up his huge body and aimed both of my open palms at his face. I screamed. A burst of ki met Joga's ugly mug and sent him sprawling backwards and crushing at least 2 cars in the process. I watched and waited, wanting to see if he got up. But he lay on his back, motionless. I'd gotten him. Jeez, Fatty didn't go down easy, huh? Guess I needed your help after all. Actually, he's not unconscious. He just can't get up, Butcher explained. Glottomonians have massive bodies, making them hard to knock over and durable. But they're so fat that they can't actually lift themselves up if they do fall over. That's why wrestling matches on Glottoman, too, are often resulting in death. Because the loser falls on their back and can no longer get up. Seriously? Sounds pretty weak to me. So why have a weakling like that on your team? I asked. Likely because he was a convenient scapegoat for the poachers. He wasn't meant to win. If I know Volkan at all, he just sent Joga as a necessary sacrifice to keep us off his tail. Then why do you send your partner to stop Melody? She could have kept her eyes on them, I snapped. Your friend would have been killed instantly. Neither of you know Volkan at all. He's far stronger than an ordinary Saiyan. And speaking of which, I understand you're not the only Saiyan on this planet. Daikon landed here too? Yeah, seems Daikon's a popular guy, I muttered. He is a terrorist for fun, Hosha explained. 11 years ago, he was charged as a criminal by the King Vegeta, ruler of the Saiyans. He was sentenced to exile on pain of death, and since then has been wandering the galaxy, causing pain and death wherever he goes. So he's a criminal? I asked. What did he do? From what we understand, he massacred his own subordinates in the Saiyan army. Not that those charges are relevant anymore, Hosha grumbled. He's a galactic criminal now, and that's what matters. Why not just let the two kill each other? I asked. It seems easier that way. For one thing, it's against galactic law. And secondly, if I let them have at it, the resulting battle would cause massive collateral. I'd rather not let that happen. But I've spoken long enough about this. The soldier Hosha turned to face me directly and holding out his hand as green energy spheres built up in his hand. It seems he was keen on arresting me now. You really want to do this? After what we just went through? I asked. You're one cold bastard. No. But there are laws that are put in place. This planet falls under the jurisdiction of the Galactic Judiciary, and you are an unregistered vigilante in this area. That cannot be allowed. Surrender or prepare to do battle, Saiyan Tomaki. Before we do this, mind if I ask who and what you are? I can't seem to sense your ki energy. That's because I do not use it. I am Hosha Ibalder. I, along with my partner Yadrin, are a race known as the Gaikans. Our planet is thick with high radiation levels that no other living creature could live through. Because of this, our race produces intense levels of radiation from our bodies which we cannot regulate. We are a danger to anyone and everyone around us, which is why we wear this heavy armor, specifically designed to siphon and contain the radiation energy. It's not to protect us, it's to protect others. Now I'll say it again. Surrender or prepare to do battle, Tomaki. I simply stood still, thinking on what to do next. This Hosha had helped me stop a monster from destroying me and my city, and he was clearly on the side of justice. But now he thought I was his enemy, and he wasn't in the mood to listen. If I fought him, would that be the right path to take? Would I be able to handle his strange radiation powers? If his partner was the same race as him, how was Melody holding up? I don't want to fight you, I whispered. You're the first Saiyan to ever say those words to me. Hosha chuckled. Which should say something towards my character, I urged. I'm not here to cause trouble or look for my own justice. I'm helping law enforcement on this planet and trying to keep the peace. Can't you overlook this lesser evil here to deal with a bigger one? I'd like to believe that, I really would, but I know Saiyan treachery and destruction. I've seen what Saiyans can do. Well, I haven't, I growled. Hosha paused a moment and lowered his hand slightly. No. You are one of the rejects, he whispered, sent to this planet to destroy it. A reject, huh? I groaned. Is that all I was to my people? My family? Well, Saiyans are a ruthless breed. They judge all things by strength, even their infants. A baby is judged at birth by its power level. Anything below a certain threshold, it's not deemed worthy. To prove their worth, they are sent to weak planets to grow up and conquer the populace. If they succeed, they are permitted to return to planet Vegeta, though it seems that fate is beyond anyone now. What do you mean? I asked. It seems you are not made aware, but the planet Vegeta, it's...
Captain Hosha!
Both Hosha and I turned around to see Melody and Yadren running back towards us. Yadren's helmet was off now, and I could clearly see that she looked somewhat human in the face, with long red hair and blue eyes, though her skin was slightly yellow-green in tint. Her eyes also looked a bit big for her head. She was panting and out of breath. Yadren, what's wrong? Hosha asked.
I pursued the girl as you ordered, and we fought briefly, but during the battle, she revealed to me what's been going on with this planet. Sir, these Saiyans here did not battle with Daikon. This Saiyan defeated him, or rather, ran him off, but he's not aiding the enemy, Yadren cried.
Well, I figured that.
That's not all, sir. One of the poachers broke off from the others, pursuing Daikon as we speak. If the two meet...
We need to find out where that poacher is headed immediately. If Daikon and the poachers collide, there's no telling who will be caught in the crossfire. Hosha turned to me and Melody. I believe that this time we will look the other way on your behalf. And while it might be inappropriate, I may need your help again, Tomaki. If you're truly not our enemy, I would be foolish to dismiss you as a potential friend. Farewell. I am certain we will meet again, Tomaki. With this final word spoken, he and Yadren took off in the direction of the poachers before I could ask him to explain what he knew about planet Vegeta. I shook my head in disappointment and then turned to Melody. Melody, you okay? She nodded, grunting a little and brushing herself off.
I've been better, but I'm all right.
Was she tough? I asked. Melody was covered in bruises, but otherwise she seemed fine.
Nothing I couldn't handle. Her radiation powers don't affect me. I'm not organic, remember? She teased. But she was pretty strong otherwise. But I think I would have won if she hadn't come to her senses.
Right. Well, what do you think? Are they our allies or our enemies? I asked.
Honestly, Tomaki, considering how many new enemies we're earning, I'd really like them to be our allies right now.
And that was chapter 27. Hope you guys enjoyed that. I enjoyed that. And no, he doesn't have a Scottish accent. I was trying to give him more of a Russian accent, honestly. Because that's kind of the joke, you know. He's a race of alien. They're a race of aliens that have nuclear energy radiating off them, and I thought, Russia, I thought it'd be funny. Wait, Tomoki's a reject? Well, yeah. Saiyan babies, when they're born, are immediately judged for their power level, and if they have a lower power level than a certain threshold, they're not allowed to live on planet Vegeta. They're sent off to another planet to conquer the populace or die trying. They're rejects. Raven in chapter 26, did you get inspired by Chrono Trigger? Nope, because I don't even know what Chrono Trigger is. Alright. Next up is Monster Club. Let's pick a Monster Club image to put on the screen. What will we pick? I think I know what one I want to pick. I think I know which one, but let me check. I know which one I want to pick. I know which one I want to pick. It's going to be one you will not expect. But it is a character that will be showing up very soon, so I will share this character with you. I know which one I want to pick. Come on. I know it's here somewhere. Don't bother hiding.
Where are you? There you are. Found it. All right, let's put it up there.
One of the favorites.
There we go. Hey, Ray, this is really fun. I should come to these more often. Yeah, I read all my stories here. It's a lot of fun. I love reading my stuff. Hello, Aaron. Good to see you. All right. Say hello to Jelly. You will get to see her later. All right. Let's get started. Monster Club, Chapter 39, written March 23rd, 2016. Ow! Abraham shouted. Calm down. It's not that deep, Michelle scoffed. Seriously, you're such a girl.
And what are you exactly? Asher smirked. A stray dog.
One more word and I'll punch your fangs in, Michelle sneered. The others snickered at their banter, but Abraham simply sat in silence as Sarah weaved webbing around his arm. The cut wasn't deep, but it was bleeding a little bit. I wish Calypso were here. She's much better at this than I am, Sarah sighed. No one's better at wrapping things than you, Sarah, Katie said encouragingly. No, I mean medical things. Calypso's better at treating injuries, Sarah explained. Is she really? Katie let out a furious hiss and everyone turned around to see Naomi walking inside. She held up her hands defensively as she entered. Easy, easy. What's with all the hostility? You've got a lot of nerve, bitch, Michelle snapped, walking towards her with her fist clenched. After what your bear did to Abraham, you're lucky I don't gut you like the fish you are. Oh, fish jokes, is it? Naomi rolled her eyes. Oh, and here I thought you were the clever one. Look, I'm sorry about what Mato did. I had no idea he'd do that, but you should know Mato is quite hostile towards humans. I admit it was my fault for letting Abraham out of my sight, but I have no control of Mato when he's not near.
Oh, trust me. I'll have words with Mato when he's out of that web prison, Asher snarled, baring his fangs.
Abraham felt slightly unnerved by the venom in Asher's voice. Everyone seemed so upset that Abraham had been hurt, and all of them seemed out for blood. Hey, everybody! What's all the hullabaloo? Tori cried out, dropping down from the top window and landing gently nearby. As she saw the expressions on everyone's faces, her smile melted away and she folded her wings. Did I miss something? She asked. I'm glad you're here, Tori, Naomi smiled. Could you go check on Mato for me? He's probably still tied up in the woods. Tied up? Tori cried. What happened? I promise to explain later. Just go and find him and calm him down. Sure. All right. Tori jumped up and flew out the window. Abraham felt Sarah finish her work on bandaging his arm at the same time. Feel better? Sarah asked. Not exactly. Our arm feels fine, but I want to know what Mato was rambling on about, what you were talking to him about earlier, Abraham said. Naomi blinked a bit and then shrugged, sitting down on a stack of old tires. Well, guess it couldn't hurt to just lay it out for you, she stated. As you know, Mato is a skinwalker, which means his gift is passed down in his family. His family of bear shapeshifters lived in a cabin in a hunting territory south of Wyoming. As skinwalkers, only silver can hurt them, of course, like werewolves. So news soon spread about the bears that were invincible, which drew in customers at a local hunting lodge. The owner of the lodge loved the business, so the game warden made a deal with the family. Simply let hunters try and shoot them, and he'd make sure that the real monster hunters never found out where they were. A good trade, yes? What went wrong? Annie asked. Well, one night the Dawnbringers found their way to the home Mato's family lived in. Most were killed, but Mato managed to escape with his sister Valerie. They ran to the hunting lodge of the game warden to beg for shelter, but it turned out the Dawnbringers had paid him off for information on the family. The money was too tempting for him to pass up. Val was killed in front of Mato, and Mato lost his mind. Mato killed every Dawnbringer in the whole damn place. There was a dark silence that seemed to actually dim the lights around them. Abraham rubbed his arms as he slowly started to forget the pain and feel pity. Regardless, Katie snapped, though a bit more hysterically. What he didn't need to hurt Abraham. I'm not saying you're wrong. But don't you think there's some merit to this philosophy? We've known monsters and humans who have tried to coexist in the past, and it always ends in destruction or failure. The humans turn on the monsters and slay them. The monsters round on the humans and slaughter them like cattle. Mato's philosophy is simply that monsters and humans are predestined to hate each other and kill each other for all time. While it is a very, morbid thing to do, yes. While it is a morbid reality, there is a degree of truth to it. Only if you allow it to be, Asher argued.
He glanced at Abraham and gave an encouraging grin. And we won't let it be that way.
Well, we'll see, won't we?
Naomi asked. Sarah finally coughed and stood up on her 8 spiny legs, turning towards the door. She started scurrying out the garage door, shooting a glance back.
Michelle, would you mind accompanying me? You're gonna free the bear, she asked. I want safety insurance, Sarah explained. I don't think Mato will hurt you now that he's calmed down, Naomi reasoned. No, it's safety insurance for him. I don't want to accidentally kill him, Sarah snarled. You still don't trust Mato? Naomi asked. If there's one thing I've learned, Miss Naomi, Sarah whispered, it's that your past is no excuse. If Mato is looking for some kind of pity party because of what happened to him, then I'm sorry, but I have no pity for a bully like him. There isn't one person in this club who hasn't suffered sometime in the past for what they are, and take that to heart, Miss Naomi. Whatever his history, it does not excuse what he did to my family.
Sarah then hurried out without another word. Michelle walked after her and glanced at Naomi.
We'll be leaving in a few days, Naomi.
Sorry. She then turned to Abraham.
Get that arm healed up. I need someone who can drive the bus.
Right. Thanks, Michelle, Abraham muttered. Though he was pleased to have the club sticking up for him, Abraham felt conflicted. He wasn't sure how to feel about everyone acting the way they were. The club seemed so hostile all of a sudden, and Naomi, who was struggling to keep everything peaceful, was having a hard time.
Abraham? Abraham, are you okay?
Abraham glanced at Annie and smiled, rubbing her head. It's okay, Annie, he assured her.
Are we leaving?
I don't know. Are we, Asher? Abraham asked. Asher shrugged. I think Michelle was probably throwing out empty threats. We don't have the resources or intel to even know where we're headed. But with that said, if Mato really believes that you are a threat, then there's every possibility he will try something like that again. And we can't take that chance, Asher answered. The sooner we move on, the better, I think.
All this trouble just because of me, huh? Abraham asked. Don't talk like that, Katie shouted. We do this for any of the club.
Abraham smiled apologetically back at her, but his heart was troubled. He was causing the club more and more difficulty with each passing day. Was Mato really right? Not completely, perhaps, but there was a shred of truth to his words. Was his presence really an affront to their own survival? He didn't want to believe it, and yet ever since he joined the club, it had been one ordeal after another. Could it be that it was because of him?
Opa? Annie whispered gently. You're crying.
Abraham blinked and rubbed his cheek, becoming aware of the tears rolling down his eyes. He hadn't even realized it was happening. Yeah, it's okay. I'm fine, Annie. Abraham reassured her. Katie and Asher exchanged looks of disappointment, and Asher shook his head, getting up and leaning against the wall of the warehouse, glancing out at the sun. He kept himself hidden from the rays, and just seeing his expression, it was plain to see that he was exhausted. Go to sleep, Asher, Katie. You both need it, Abraham assured them. Not until we have someone who we trust watching you.
I'll watch him,
Annie explained. Someone older than you, kiddo, Asher laughed.
Oh, you don't trust me?
Naomi asked. Not yet, Asher growled. Before he could finish speaking his mind, though, the sound of the door opening cut him off, and in walked a very tired-looking Tamil, being led by Calypso. We home now? Tamil asked, dragging his feet.
Yes, Tamil, Calypso sighed. You're so lazy sometimes.
Not used to walking around so much, Tamil mumbled. He paused a moment and turned his head from side to side as if adjusting his ears. Where is everyone? I hear no one. They ran out for a bit, Tamil, Asher explained. Both of you step inside the office area with me and I'll explain. Asher took Calypso and Tamil into a small office area to brief them, leaving Abraham, Annie, Katie, and Naomi all alone in the middle of the warehouse.
For what it's worth, Naomi spoke up, I am sorry for what Mato did. It was out of line, regardless of his or my personal belief.
Katie nodded in respect, but did not change the frown on her face. All was silent for a while as Abraham felt more and more awkward among the few who were around him. When Sarah, Michelle, Tori, and Mato all returned from their excursion, Mato didn't even look in Abraham's direction. He simply walked off to another corner of the warehouse. Naomi hurried after him, most likely to talk. Tori, however, flew to Abraham and knelt down next to him, looking at his arm.
I heard what happened, she chirped. Please don't hate Mato. He's really not a bad guy, really.
I don't hate him, Abraham assured her.
Speak for yourself,
Katie hissed. Abraham shot her a look and then turned to Tori again. I promise. I'm fine, Tori. It's not a big deal. Forgive and forget, right? Abraham grinned. Tori beamed and quickly hugged Abraham around the neck.
Oh, thank you. I was so worried you'd hate us after what happened.
Why would I hate you and Naomi? Abraham asked. Neither of you hurt me.
Well, Mato and Naomi always say that humans naturally hate us, and you didn't seem to hate us before, so I was worried you'd start to.
Abraham's a bit too nice for that.
Or maybe too naive,
Michelle smirked. Shut up, Abraham blushed.
Their conversation was interrupted when Tamil and Calypso emerged from the office. Calypso's face was contorted in frustration at his belief as she completely ignored the rest of the group and walked across the warehouse.
Calypso? Sarah called. Aren't you going to take a look at Abraham's arm? I need to speak with Naomi for a moment, Calypso called back. I'll check on him in a moment.
Again, Abraham felt a dark wave of guilt run over him. Calypso was angry. Sure, she'd been angry before, but she usually kept it downplayed, like when she lashed out at the Dawnbringer near the store. But now her anger was not only evident, but it was like she had tunnel vision. Abraham had drawn a divide between the club and their hosts. I didn't mean for any of this.
None of us did, but it is what it is,
Sarah tried to assure him. That doesn't make it right, Abraham argued. He stood up, nearly knocking Annie over as he stood. I need some fresh air.
I'll go too, Katie offered. Me too.
Annie jumped up and ran to Abraham. Thanks, but I'd rather be alone for a bit, Abraham retorted. Katie and Annie both looked disappointed, though Katie looked somewhat worried about Abraham as well. Did she know how he felt? Abraham marched to the garage door to slip out. Abraham! Abraham froze and looked to Asher, who was sitting close by, giving him a gentle but firm glare. Don't forget what I told you on the beach, the night I punched you. Abraham remembered too well what Asher was talking about. He remembered that night and how Asher had explained Abraham's importance to the club. He gave a soft smile to Asher, acknowledging him, but his heart was still troubled. He needed to think. I'm not running away, Asher, Abraham assured him. I just want to think. Asher closed his eyes and nodded back, giving a yawn, clearly exhausted still. Abraham slipped out of the warehouse and found himself exhaling heavily, as if he had just stepped out into a cold rain, breathing heavy and trying to catch his breath. The anger and hostility had been so thick in there. He took a few steps away from the warehouse, wanting to walk around for a bit. Abraham stopped dead in his tracks and looked to see a figure running towards the warehouse fast. Backing away, Abraham slammed his fist on the door. Guys! Guys, we have company! Katie and Michelle were out in a flash, with Anna hiding behind Abraham's legs. Tamil stumbled towards the door, feeling around until he found Sarah's arm, who escorted him out.
Sounds like a horse, Tamil noted. A horse running. What would a horse be doing out here? Don't be stupid, Katie asked. I'm not stupid. Shut up, both of you, Michelle snarled. Here it comes.
The entire club braced themselves for the horse that was approaching. Only it wasn't completely a horse. Tamil had been right that it was a horse's gallop he was hearing, as the figure that approached had the body of a young stallion with a dark brown hair and long brown horsehair tail swaying behind it. But where the neck began was not a horse's head, but instead the upper torso of a young boy with long, wild, dark brown hair and deep blue eyes. His torso was covered by a white t-shirt with a red jacket over it. He had a small bandage wrapped around his left arm, but otherwise his horse half bore no clothing.
A centaur, Michelle gasped. I've never seen one before. Me neither, Tamil joked. I told you to shut up, Michelle snapped. Could not help it, Tamil snickered.
The centaur saw the group and reared back in surprise.
I didn't know they were real, Sarah gasped, looking amazed. Said the spider girl, Katie smirked.
Sarah rolled her eyes but didn't respond, all now staring at the centaur galloping towards them.
Ah!
He cried, backing away quickly.
Who are you? We're Mato and Naomi. You didn't kill them, did you? Answer me. Calm down, Katie shouted. We didn't kill anyone. Who are you? Shouting usually doesn't calm people down, Katie, Sarah whispered. You need to talk softly. Where's Mato? Where's Naomi? And Tori? The centaur demanded, stomping his hoof. David?
All eyes turned to Naomi and Mato, who seemingly overheard the shouting, came out to see what was going on. The centaur, David, smiled upon seeing them. Hey, he shouted, trotting towards them. Are these new friends of yours?
Not exactly,
Naomi said. What's wrong, David? Mato asked. I thought you were back on the farm with Alex.
That's what I'm here to tell you, David cried, grabbing Mato's hand desperately and tugging him. You're all in danger. The Dawnbringers were seen in mass. Penn saw no less than 30 angels, and they were headed this way. When? Naomi shouted. Yesterday. They could be here as early as tomorrow morning, David shouted. They're going to kill you.
And that was chapter 39. Need to get something to drink real quick. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. Alright, I'm back. Alright. Alright, let's do it. Chapter 40. Written April 19th, 2016. And after looking over the chapter real quick, this is not the chapter where Jelly appears, so we'll put in a different character for this. Don't worry, I'll still give you guys a character, just not that one. I'll give you this one. He shows up in the next chapter. Alright. Let's do it. Tomorrow morning? Asher asked. Are you certain about that? David looked up at Asher, who was standing just within the doorway of the warehouse, not willing to step out into the sunlight.
Who are you? They're with us, Naomi snapped. Are you sure that they'll be here that soon?
Yeah, no doubt, David argued. Mato growled and turned to Tori. Double check that.
Roger.
She jumped up and flew high into the sky and away towards the woods without another word. Mato looked to Naomi and then to David as if their expressions were all that needed to be shown to communicate.
David, come inside with us. Why? We need to talk, she urged. Mato, would you mind?
I'll stand watch, I understand.
Naomi smiled and led David into the warehouse as the rest of the club followed. Everyone should sit down. I have some explaining to do, Naomi announced.
The club all looked at each other, and Abraham could feel a small degree of frustration from his family. Asher and Michelle in particular looked rather put off by the lack of information and secrecy from Naomi and Mato. Where had this centaur David come from? Why was he here? What did he know about the Dawnbringers? Calypso, those just looked utterly crushed, possibly because of how Mato had treated Abraham, and how she had tried to vouch for this group due to their friendship with Naomi. Whatever the case, all the club took a seat on an old tire and boxes waiting to hear Naomi's explanation.
About 15 miles north of here is a farm in the middle of a clearing. We call that location the barn. It's a safe haven for monsters, kind of like what we have here, though we're not as inclusive, Naomi explained. It's run by a man named Alex. David here is one of his monsters that lives in the barn, and he's often the messenger between our groups and his. Why didn't you tell us any of this sooner? Michelle asked. I didn't think about it, honestly, Naomi shrugged. It wasn't really relevant at the time. But the point is that while we don't keep in regular contact with the barn, they often act as our eyes and ears from the woods. When something happens, they like to inform us of it. But this is more than I was expecting.
What are you going to do? David asked nervously. Christina said that it would be a good idea for you to come to the barn for a while until things blow over.
That's sweet of her, but no, we're not leaving here, not without a fight. Besides, the barn can't support all of us. Maybe just a few.
Then we'll send those of us who can't fight, Asher spoke up.
Naomi turned to him in surprise and raised an eyebrow. Are you sure?
30 or so Dawnbringers is a big problem, and this place isn't fortified enough to protect everyone. Those who can't fight well should go to the barn of yours and hide out until it blows over, Asher explained.
Asher, are you sure this is wise? Michelle asked. How do we know we can trust them?
I don't.
It's true!
Suddenly, from out of the open window in the ceiling, Tori came crashing into the room at breakneck speed, landing on a stack of tires near the group.
I saw them! There's gotta be like 100 or something! Tori, are you over-exaggerating? Naomi asked. Okay, maybe not 100, but there's a lot of them, Tori said. Seriously, they all had guns and stuff, and they were wearing hunting clothes and camo stuff. Probably passing themselves off as big game hunters, Naomi groaned. Yes, we're in for some trouble. Tori, your body's more fragile than mine, or Mato. You should go to the barn with David. Yeah, I get to see Alex again. His voice is funny, Tori giggled.
Abraham couldn't help but marvel at how carefree Tori was.
As for who've come from the club to the barn, that's up to you.
Asher turned to face Abraham and sighed sadly. Me? Abraham asked. Yeah. I'm sorry, Abraham, but I'd just be in the way. I get it, I muttered. Asher started to argue but shut his mouth again and looked aside in defeat. Michelle pulled him to the side and whispered in his ear. Asher nodded and hurried back to Abraham again, a bit more encouragement in his voice. It's not that you're in the way. We just don't want to lose you. You're one of us, okay? Besides, it'd be nice if we gathered some intel on the barn and its inhabitants. Abraham just sighed, knowing that Michelle had told Asher to say this. He just smiled agreeably and stepped back. Sure, I can do that. As for the rest, Tamil, you should go too.
No argument,
Tamil grumbled.
I'm not cut out for fighting, but promise no one get hurt.
Tamil stood up anxiously and hugged himself in fear.
I no want to lose family. You'll see us again, Tamil. Michelle smirked. Ha! His blind joke, right? Tamil laughed. You wish were funny. And you too, Annie, Michelle added. Why? I want help, she pouted. I know, but we really need you to go with Abraham and Tamil so you can stay safe, Michelle pleaded.
Annie looked away disappointed, clearly not pleased with being separated from everyone.
Hey, I'll be with you, okay? Abraham offered. She nodded but did not look any more satisfied.
Abraham held his hand to her and she took it, rubbing her cheek.
If you're going, now is the time. It'll take you the rest of the day to get there, even riding David. Ride me, David shouted. I'm not some common pony. Stop whining like a little girl, Naomi growled. You can at least carry one or two of them there. Fine. But I swear, if any of you say a word about this to the others, I'll kick you across the farm, he snapped.
Let's get moving. All of you, Asher shouted.
David hurried outside, clearly intimidated by Asher, while everyone else gathered around.
Tamil, Abraham, and Annie moved together.
Take care of yourselves, okay? Michelle ordered. If you have any trouble, we'll all be here.
Asher nodded his agreement. Asher took Abraham's hand and smiled reassuringly. Abraham, you're in charge of this group.
Me? Abraham gasped. Him?
Tamil laughed. Yeah, I wouldn't trust anyone else for this, Asher nodded. Keep the group together and keep them alive. I don't care how you do it. Just keep our family alive.
I'll do my best.
Annie, you be safe. Tamil, please take this seriously, Asher added. Sarah giggled at this. She then looked at Abraham and tearfully hugged him tightly, making Abraham blush.
Abraham, you'll be careful, okay?
We be safe, Sarah, Tamil chuckled. Not gonna die again.
Don't jinx it,
Michelle snapped, slapping him on the back of the head, while Calypso gave her hugs and goodbyes. Abraham felt a tap on his shoulder and he turned to Katie, who was standing behind him fiddling with her hair. What's wrong, Katie? Abraham asked.
Can I talk to you real quick? She asked.
Abraham glanced back at the others for a moment and nodded slowly. Katie took Abraham by the hand and led him away from the group at the far back corner of the warehouse and then inhaled. What is it?
Abraham, I wish I could go with you three, she admitted, but they need me here to help hold off the Dawnbringers. Besides, I'd only slow you down on your way to the barn.
I understand. It's not your fault, Abraham assured her.
But that's not what I wanted to tell you, she whispered. Abraham, I want to say, be safe.
She hung her head and cradled her arm for a minute, as if she was embarrassed by her own statement, and Abraham couldn't help but grin. I'll be okay, Katie. It's you and the others who need to be careful. You're about to get into a big fight, right? Katie snorted and shook her head.
30 Dawnbringers? Asher wiped the floor with them. We're just here for moral support. But you don't know what kind of people or creatures are waiting for you at this barn or whatever. I don't want... Damn it, I don't know what to say, what I want to say. I don't know how to do this, she shouted. You idiot.
She darted forward and suddenly wrapped her arms around Abraham tightly, causing Abraham to cough in surprise as he felt the full weight of Katie crash into him.
Ugh! Just come back to us, okay? She hissed.
I'll be fine, Katie, Abraham grunted, smiling a little and patting her back.
Katie, you two done? Michelle shouted. It's time to go, or should we give you two some time for a goodbye kiss? Shut your face!
Katie snapped, letting go of Abraham, a deep blush running across her face. Abraham couldn't hide the grin on his own face at the suggestion of a kiss from Katie. It was too silly to consider. I'll be safe, guys, Abraham assured her. You stay safe, too. Abraham ran after Annie and Tamil, who were already outside with David. Sarah and Calypso were helping Tamil onto David's back, who was looking quite frustrated with the whole scenario.
Annie, you climb on next, Sarah instructed, lifting Annie up so she rested between Tamil's body and David's human-shaped torso.
Annie wrapped her little arms around David, making David roll his eyes in contempt.
You do realize I can't carry all three of them, right? David snapped. I'll only be able to carry two. I'll carry Abraham, Tori giggled, bouncing up and down.
Are you sure?
Yeah, you're pretty light,
Tori nodded.
Well, go ahead then,
Naomi gestured. Tori ran behind Abraham and giggled.
Okay, hold out your hands up over your head like you're reaching for the sky, she instructed.
Abraham did as told and suddenly felt Tori press herself against his back and hug him from behind. He then felt her two talons dig into his ankles and he stopped with a cry of pain as they dug into his skin.
Ow! He groaned. Sorry, but this is the only way to carry you for a long flight, she laughed. Enough, all of you, Naomi shouted. We don't have time to waste. Get going and be safe. We'll come for you when the danger's past. Okie dokie, Tori squealed, extending her wings.
With a mighty flap, Abraham felt him and her bodies leaving the ground as she began to climb into the sky. Soon the earth was far below them. He could just make out the rest of the club, all waving frantically at him, shouting goodbyes.
Close your arms against your sides, silly, Tori called.
Abraham blushed, realizing he'd not let his arms down yet, and as he did as told. Tori leveled out in midair and began flying north at breakneck speed.
the cold, rushing air bringing tears to Abraham's eyes. Can't we slow down? Abraham shouted. No way! I want to beat David back. Why? Racing is fun. Don't you know that? Tori laughed. Abraham looked down to see if he could see David and quickly wished he hadn't, as the ground below seemed so far away for him. Just how high up had Tori gotten them? It was amazing she could fly with such added weight. He silently prayed in the back of his head that she didn't get tired or exhausted and drop him on the way. But from the look on her face, she was having a ball just flying so near the clouds. After about 30 minutes or so of flying, Abraham caught sight of a clearing not far away with a red barn in the middle. The clearing was surrounded by trees with a small pond near the farm. The grass surrounding the barn was a light green, but had breaks and segments of deep brown like some kind of crop field. What kind of barn was this? An animal farm? A crop-growing plantation? That's the barn, Tori shouted. I don't see David, so I think we won. How can you see anything from this height? Abraham asked. Tori giggled but didn't answer and slowly began to descend down to the ground just outside of the main house to the western side of the barn. The house was made of wood. It stood 2 stories with a front porch and 4 windows, 2 on every level. Tori let go of Abraham and jumped off of him, running to the front porch like an excited child. Alex, Penn, Christina, she cried, running to the door and knocking. It's me, Tori. I brought a friend. Tori, they might be busy. It is a farm after all. Maybe they do farm work all day. Oh, yeah. Alex it probably is. Come on, we gotta find him. Who is Alex exactly? Abraham asked. Oh, he owns the farm. He's a lot like you, really, she added, running past Abraham towards the field to the east. So he's human? Abraham asked. What do you mean he's like me? Tori didn't answer, but kept running, forcing Abraham to run after her. His legs felt like a jelly as he chased her, still not walking well after flying so long. As it drew near the field, a figure could be seen with a pitchfork of some kind toiling in the soil. Alex! Tori shouted. The figure turned around and Abraham drew close to finally get a look at the mysterious Alex. He stood nearly 7 feet tall. His hair was black and dirty with a small amount of stubble on his chin. 2 long bull horns grew from his head and a cow tail swayed behind him. He wore a pair of jeans but no shirt, revealing a muscular and sweaty body. His hands were callous and rough, and his teeth were a long piece of straw he was chewing on. Abraham froze in place at the sight of him. Hey, Tori, the man grunted in a heavy country boy accent. What in blue blazes you doing around here, girl? Tori didn't hesitate to jump into a hug, being caught by Alex in a tight hug. Alex smiled and sat down his pitchfork to hug the young harpy. I learned some new tricks since I was here. Do you want to see him? Tori asked. After I'm done, darling, he laughed. Alex turned to see Abraham and sat Tori down. And who's your friend? Oh, right, Alex. This is Abraham. He's a human friend. He and a few others are coming to stay for a day or two because they're on the run from the Dawnbringers, she answered simply. Alex just stared at Tori and Abraham in shock and confusion. What in the hell y'all rambling on about? Dawnbringers? A few others? He glanced at me in confusion as if he might be able to make some sense of that. My thoughts turned back to what Katie and Asher had said, learning who these people were and being cautious around them. I wouldn't trust anyone else for this. Keep the group together and keep them safe had been Asher's orders. Abraham took a serious expression and readied himself. The others were counting on him. They depended on him. He wouldn't let them down. My name's Abraham. I'm with the Monster Club. A group of my friends is coming here for safe haven from the Dawnbringers. Please, let us stay here for a day or two. Well, you got yourself a mighty proper way of introductions, Abraham. He held out his large hand to shake and grin. Name's Alexander, but everyone calls me Alex. Minotaurs, you likely noticed. Welcome to the barn. More than happy to accommodate. And that was Monster Club, Chapter 40. All right, well, let's move on to Shogun of Crime, and we'll wrap up for the night. All right, Shogun of Crime, Chapter 18, June 9th, 2020. Let's go ahead and take this off. I think y'all remember how last session went.
All right. Let's get started. Shogun of Crime, Chapter 18, written June 9th, 2020. To say New Mercia was shaken was an understatement. Even a month after the infamous massacre at the youth center, the city and communities that made it up were reeling. Feelings were mixed about the Tigress of the Taiga Syndicate. Some saw her as a hero who finally put an end to the out-of-control looters and vandals within the community, but others saw her as a reckless and murderous sociopath. But for the NMPD, it wasn't up for debate how they interpreted the Tigress. All that mattered was that she was brought to justice. The only problem was that she was nowhere to be found. After the events of the arson and massacre, Oichi Taiga had vanished. The police had no leads on her movements, and her operations seemed to run as smoothly and efficiently as ever without her. This was unnerving, to say the least. The commissioner, who had received emails and calls concerning the whereabouts and activities of the Taiga Syndicate, was now beside himself and was ordering all hands to double their efforts to uncover the identity of the Tigress and to bring her in. Todd had told no one. Things were picking up quickly for Todd. With the rise in gang activity, several witnesses had been pulled to begin testifying against local drug lords and gang affiliates. Now Todd found himself in a safe house just outside of town as one of the beat cops who'd been assigned security. The witness's name was Daryl Kingston, the owner of a small bowling alley where a few of the Timberwolf triads would hold private meetings. He offered information on the triads and their dealings in exchange for protection. Considering some of the things he'd seen, he probably knew a great deal, which was good because his testimony would be instrumental in putting away Shin Wong, a leader of the triad and a former hitman. Daryl claimed he'd seen Wong butcher 2 people outside of his bowling alley a month ago, and he couldn't stay quiet about it anymore. It was 2 days until Daryl would appear in court, so for now the police would sit on the safe house. Todd heard Daryl in the bathroom having an upset stomach from nerves. He didn't care about that. He was just staring out the window thinking about Oichi. "Hey, you all right?" Todd glanced up to see Detective Brown glancing down at him. Detective Brown was the one in charge of the investigation and tasked with the protection of Daryl Kingston. He was a good man and a good cop, if a bit too laid back at times. "Yeah, I'm fine." "You haven't been yourself lately. Your partner says you just stare off into space sometimes." "I've had a lot on my mind," Todd answered calmly. "Things not work out between you and your lady friend?" he asked. It was no secret that Todd had been dating Oichi, but he'd never divulged who she really was. He'd come close several times to marching into the chief's office and telling him exactly who Oichi was, but he always stopped short. He couldn't explain why, but it never sat well with him to tell the chief. It felt like betrayal. What an ironic sentiment. We went our separate ways. It couldn't work out from 2 different worlds and all that. "Well, plenty of fish in the sea," Detective chuckled. "Still, based on the picture you'd share about her, that fish was a shark." "You don't know the half of it." "Anyway, did you hear the news about 1PP? Brown asked. Todd glanced back at the detective confused. "No, what's up?" "Well, supposedly there was a spray-painted message on the building this morning left in red paint." "Who left it?" "Timberwolves," Brown answered gruffly. "Probably trying to ruffle our feathers." "Well, what'd the commissioner say about it?" "Hasn't said anything. Just a lot of hot air being blown around," Brown shrugged. "You know the Triad. They started off being the second biggest in the city. The Leviathans are weakened, so they're all set to take over, and now this Tiger group appears and steals their thunder. They feel like they've got a reputation to uphold, and if a whistleblower spills out one of their own, well, that'd just be a sucker punch, right?" "Yeah, so maybe we should take the threat more seriously," Todd offered. Brown shrugged. "You kidding? They don't know our location," Brown replied. That wasn't much comfort. The Triad's a means of getting information. "I think we should relocate to a different safe house. There's too much chance that we..." Todd stopped a moment as he heard the sound of motorcycles in the distance. He hurried to the window and glanced outside as a small group of cycles and a van drove up towards the house, forming a semicircle just at the end of the driveway. The safe house wasn't in the thick of the city, more in the suburbs, but it was still easy to box in the pathway out of the house. As men on the cycles began getting off and grabbing handguns out of their holsters, Todd backed away from the window fast, fear gripping his lungs, making it hard to breathe. Brown and a few of the other officers in the room looked outside, and the same horror hit them too. "Out the back! We need to get out the back of the house!" Brown instructed, going to grab a near-petrified Kingston. "No!" another officer, Officer Winston hissed. "They'll just mow us down as we make our way out. They'll see us." He was right, and Todd knew better than to argue the point, but there seemed no other alternative. He had to think of something, anything they could try. "Try looking around for something to barricade the doors and windows with," Todd shouted. All men ran to their positions, searching and scrapping for the wood or chairs to slam against the door. Detective Brown ran to a hatch, which he opened to find a basement.
Daryl, come here, he hollered, bringing the trembling witness to the door. Hide in the basement until this blows over. As he helped him down the stairs, Todd's eyes caught sight of a box near the bottom of the stairs marked with yellow and red. Detective, could you pull out those boxes? He asked. They're not heavy enough to board the doors. Just do it, Todd asked. Without arguing, he tossed up the box for Todd. Guys, they're unloading the van, and there's a lot more of them out there now, one officer shouted, pulling his firearm. What the fuck do we do? I have an idea, Todd whispered, smiling as he began unloading the contents of the box. Andrew Pan walked 5 paces towards the safe house. He was thankful for their mole and the police who fed them this information, and wanted this over with as quickly as possible. One of his fellow wolves handed him a megaphone, and he clicked it on with a loud screech from the audio receiver. Little pigs, can we come in? He shouted. You got someone we want, and we need to do him in. The other wolves chuckled at his poetic demand. Suddenly another voice was heard shouting back, Not by the hair of our chinny chin chin. A little frustrated, Andrew lifted up the megaphone. It doesn't have to end bloody, friend. Just let us have Kingston and we won't hurt anyone else. You're not the cops we want dead. So you want some of us dead, the voice shouted back. Listen, we can't just hand over a witness like that. But maybe we can reach an agreement? Sure, here's your agreement, Andrew snapped. In exactly 30 seconds, we're going to march into that house and kill everyone we find inside. The only thing you can do to stop us is hand over Kingston. We've got you outnumbered and outgunned. The wolves around him all began loading their guns as if to demonstrate the point. The response was calm and cocky. You sure about that? We're armed to the teeth in here, and if you so much as take 5 more steps here, we'll put more holes in you than the spokes of your bicycle wheels. To this, there was an air of concern that rippled through the wolves. You're bluffing, cop. I don't bluff. I should also inform you that I have connections with the Iliano Mafia family and the Taiga Syndicate. This sent a ripple of fear through everyone by their bikes. Iliano was an old and respected mafia family with deep ties to the city's underworld. Though not as active as before, they still had a strong presence and rapport. But the Taiga, this was something worth being worried about. They knew what the Taiga was capable of. That's a joke, right? What kind of cop would be doing working for 2 criminal families? Andrew asked. Let's not joke around, friend, the voice responded. You found our safe house somehow, and that probably involved a dirty cop. Cops working with gangsters like you is nothing new in this city. If this threat was real, then the wolves had to tread carefully. But at the same time, the reputation was still on the line. The offer still stands, pig. Even if you do know the Iliano and the Taiga, you have someone we want. Hand him over. 1 step closer and we kill every one of you, the voice shouted back. Andrew dared to take the risk, and this was all a bluff, and took a step forward. Suddenly, there was a loud explosion. Andrew cried out as he felt the burning pain of a bullet passing through his shoulder. He fell back in agony, but before he could give the order to return fire, suddenly the windows of the house exploded with shots and eruptions. Get back! Get back! Andrew shouted at the sound of gunfire tearing through the house. He hadn't been bluffing. They were armed and dangerous, and every cop in that house was firing at them. The wolves retreated behind their bikes in the large van for cover and began returning fire, shooting wildly and furiously, trying to get off any shot they could, but the gunshots from the house kept coming. Gunshots returned for nearly 10 minutes before suddenly Andrew noticed something odd. None of the gunshots seemed to be hitting the van or cycles. He should be hearing the sound of pinging metal, but he heard nothing. Hold fire! Stop shooting, you assholes! He roared. After a few moments, all the wolves stopped, only to notice no more gunshots were coming from the house. A realization began to dawn on him, one he was blushing already thinking about. With a hiss of rage, he ran up to the house, expecting any moment for another volley to hit him, but when none did, he kicked the door open as smoke billowed out. It was like someone had lit a fire just past the door, and now only smoke filled the house. Andrew stormed in and looked around, hoping to see wounded and dead cops, but instead the house was empty. As more and more wolves came in, covering their mouths and noses from the smoke, they investigated the house, when Andrew began to notice tattered red paper on the floors and walls, and he began to realize what had happened. Hey, boss, look. One of the wolves found a box marked firecrackers. Son of a bitch! Andrew ran to the back of the house and looked out the window, hoping to see where the cops in Kingston had gone, but saw no one. They escaped while setting off the fireworks as a bluff. That was some quick thinking, Todd! Brown laughed as they hurried down the sidewalk across the other block. Daryl was breathing a little easier, and all the cops were chuckling amongst themselves about the cleverness of the trick. Todd didn't have time to feel relieved, though. While the others had strung up firecrackers by the windows and doors of the house, he'd had to buy time for them. and in doing so he'd mentioned his affiliation with Taiga and his own father. Would the wolves make that connection to figure out who he was? And if they did, would they use that against him? He'd won the battle, but this war was getting worse, and the wolves wouldn't take that insult lying down. He knew that he needed help, and the thought of who he needed to call made him sick to his stomach. Who else could handle a pack of wolves, if not a tigress?
And that was chapter 18. And I admit, that plan to use firecrackers to pretend to fire guns was not my original idea. I took that from the movie Hopscotch, one of my favorite comedies. Hopscotch is this movie about this ex-CIA operative who they said was too old to do his job, like he's no longer good at it. So he has stolen a bunch of CIA secrets and he's releasing them in book chapters. Like he's basically writing a book and each chapter is basically revealing these secrets and he's releasing them to all the secret organizations all over the world, basically to get back at the CIA for getting rid of him. So the CIA is having to chase him down to catch him, and they chase him all the way to this house. And the FBI surrounds the house, and he's set up firecrackers around every edge of the house. And they go off, and so it sounds like gunfire. So they're all shooting the inside of the house with no one there, of course. And he's already commandeered a truck and is driving away. It's one of the funniest movies. It really is. It's not a super action movie. It's not like an action style movie. It's more of just a comedy because he doesn't kill anyone. He actually has this rule: he never carries a loaded gun because he knows that he doesn't. He knows to avoid killing. That's his rule, you know? Yes, Hannah, you know the movie. Now we know what FBI stands for. Fucking ball-busting idiots. All right. Chapter 19. Written July 11th, 2020. War was on the horizon, and the city could feel it. The police had begun twice and active in the few weeks following the safe house attack, if for no other reason than their own security. The Timberwolves were furious at being tricked, and their boss, Donnie Chen, was swearing that he'd find the cop who made the bluff and bleed him like the pig he was. Police Chief Bolton had told Todd explicitly to stay low for a few days until things blew over. But that hadn't stopped the wolves from harassing officers, vandalizing empty cop cars, and on a few occasions throwing Molotov cocktails into the rolled-down windows of police cars to burn and injure the police inside. With each arrest of a wolf, another 2 cops were attacked. Todd sat in the precinct, grumbling darkly as the bustling and chattering cops around him moved around in a haste. Everyone knew that something would happen soon, but no one was sure what. Todd didn't like sitting around, but he'd been told to simply stay behind a desk for a while, and some of the officers in the precinct seemed to blame him for their troubles. His dad had texted him a few times asking if he was okay and if he needed any help, but Todd had ignored these offers. He knew the help his father would give, and he'd sworn not to go back to his dad for that life, especially considering his dad's mafia family didn't have the muscle it used to have, just the influence. But influence wouldn't do any good here, not when Chen was out for blood and the wolves were literally howling for revenge. Edwards! Todd heard the call and almost forgot that it was his last name. He'd gotten so caught up in his old family, he'd forgotten for the briefest of moments that it wasn't his anymore. He stood up at the call and saw Chief Bolton by the door waving to him. Need to see you a second. Todd nodded and walked to his office as he opened the door for him. Walking inside felt a lot like being called into an administrator's office at grade school. You knew you were in trouble, but you weren't sure where to start and to try to get out of it. Frankly, though, that didn't matter too much to Todd. Right now, he just needed answers and a clear direction to start working. When the door closed behind the chief, Todd clenched his fists a little, expecting to be yelled at or some kind of raised voice. But instead, all he heard was a sigh. Doing all right, Edwards? He asked, clearly trying to sound civil and not panicked. It wasn't working. I've been better, Todd answered questioningly. Bolton just rubbed his chin in frustration before letting out a groan of anger. Look, I'll cut to the chase. We're in deep shit, Todd, he grumbled. The wolves haven't hit us, have they? Todd asked. No, but it's like waiting for a bomb to go off. Everyone knows it's just a matter of time. I mean, it's absolute panic out there, Bolton snapped, indicating the terrified police officers.
Nothing but nerves and jitters for the last few days. I can't do anything with this. I'm sorry, sir, Todd answered politely, feeling a slight twang of guilt for the sense of dread washing over everyone. You did your job, and frankly, that's all I can ask of anyone around here, the chief shrugged. But that's not what I need to talk to you about. I read your report about the safe house incident. There are 2 major points of contention we need to discuss. Chief Bolton reached under his desk drawer and pulled out a manila folder. Firstly, you mentioned your suspicions about a dirty cop feeding information to the wolves. Yes, I did say that. I think that's how they found the safe house. We dug up on that lead and didn't find anything out of the ordinary in the chain of information from this precinct. Chief Bolton paused a moment as if building to a greater point. But we did find something disturbing in the DA. One of the yahoos in the DA's office hasn't reported it to work in the last few days. And after digging a little on her, turns out she's cousins with a wolf lieutenant. Well, let's go question her, Todd said. Sit down, Edwards, Bolton growled. That's not the problem we have right now. The problem is that we started investigating the police force before the DA, which means there's no telling how much that bitch could feed the wolves before she had to make herself scarce. And since you were part of the safe house operation, she'll have your name, which means the wolves will know who you are. Todd finally started to appreciate the depth of this river of shit he was in and realizing he was close to drowning. Bolton wasn't done, though, as he opened up the file and pointed to the top page. It had Todd's face on it. It was his personnel file. The second problem we have, Todd, is what you reportedly said to the wolves to buy time for your escape. You said you had ties to the Iliano Mafia family and the Taiga Syndicate. He leaned forward to Todd and could take in the dark undertone of disturbing information in his face. I know who your father is, so I know exactly what you meant by the first part. But what the hell do you know about the Taiga? Not much, frankly, Todd growled, trying hard to keep a poker face and losing terribly. It was all he could do not to blurt out Oichi's name. I had dinner with my dad not long ago, and he told me some stuff about them. I was hoping using the Taiga's family name would scare the wolves into hesitating. So you were bluffing. Well, that's good, Edwards. Which, by the tone of his voice, showed that it was definitely not a good thing, and that he likely didn't believe a word of what Todd had said. Because the wolves are every bit as organized and dangerous as the Taiga are, and if the Taiga family find out that you have dirt on them, the wolves won't be the only ones pounding on our door. This thought had not occurred to Todd, but he had hardly felt the need to be worried. Oichi was aware of how much Todd knew and didn't know. She wouldn't want to hurt him or the police. She wasn't that kind of person and never had been. A small part of him felt a rush of nostalgia as he pictured her smiling face. He chased her from his mind quickly. That smiling girl wasn't Oichi. Oichi was something different entirely. In any case, Todd, if there's anything you know about the Taiga, it's time to come clean. I'm not real interested in making your life more difficult, but they've been a pain in the ass long enough, and I think it's time... Psst. All at once, the world went dark. There were shouts and curses all around. People bumped into each other and shouted as the lights had all shut off. The computers and fans all went dead, too. The power to the precinct had been cut. Bolton rose to his feet and sweat began to permeate his face. Shit, it's starting. Todd didn't need to ask what he meant by that. The triad was here, and they were going to start taking lives before long. We need to call the other precincts and get some backup now. As Bolton ran to the door to start issuing orders, Todd knew it wouldn't matter if he did. The triad had no intention of staying long. The Timberwolves would hit hard, burn the place, and try to get their hands on him, and then they'd pull out. The sound of shattering glass came from the sound of exploding fire as Molotovs were hurled through windows to ignite the inside of the precinct. Police shouted and screamed as they rushed to put out the small fires. Todd ran to his desk to grab his sidearm, knowing he'd probably have to use it. Barricade the doors and windows, wait for the cavalry to arrive! As Bolton shouted these words, a sudden thought began to slink into Todd's head. It was something Bolton had said in the office. It was stupid. Ungodly. Dementedly ridiculous to even consider, but the sounds of shouting outside were getting louder and more fires were starting as police rushed to put them out. As the police fought to get back fires and tried firing their sidearms from open windows, Todd snuck to the chief's room and closed the door behind him. With the light still out and only the soft glow of fires beyond the door to give him light, he pulled out his phone and dialed a number he was certain would never pick up. It would want nothing to do with it. All the same, he stood stock still and waited for a response. A voice. He waited for the ringing to stop and would hold his breath until it started again. After the fourth rang, he was certain it would go straight to answering machine. Until it didn't. The line picked up, but it was dead quiet. No one spoke. No one breathed. The sound of shouting and screaming police and gangsters could be just faintly heard as Todd gathered his thoughts. I'm still furious at you, Todd said angrily. I haven't forgiven you, and I don't know if I ever will. But right now, I'm in deep shit and I don't know what to do. The Triad is out for my blood and they're gonna burn down my police station to get to me. They know about who my dad is, and they know I'm familiar with your organization, so they probably want to squeeze me for info I don't have. He waited for a moment for a response, but there was none. Only silence. He continued. You'll do what you want. Criminals like you always do. And I'm sure I'm the last person you want to hear from, but... He inhaled before finally speaking one last time. Damn it, Oichi, I need your help. I don't know or care how, but please. Then we can go back to never talking to each other again. He stopped and waited. The cold, empty line felt like agony to his ears. He started to lower the phone to hang up. How long do you think you have before they break through? The voice was fast, worried, and unmistakably Oichi. Todd didn't know if he was more happy to hear her voice or more happy that she seemed invested. I'd say 15 minutes tops, he answered. We're trying to call for reinforcements, but it'll... Not for me. Buy as much time as you can. In 12 minutes, I'm going to make the Triad regret they ever knew your name. Wait, what are you going to do? Todd asked, sensing a frightening chill in Oichi's voice that sent a shiver down his back. Exactly what you said, Todd. I'm going to do what I want. The line went dead, and Todd nearly dropped his phone. His hand was shaking so hard. Her voice was not the one he'd expected, and it was not at all the cheerful, friendly creature he'd known. She was a tigress, a predator, and she was angry. He ran from the room and grabbed Bolton's arm as he was busy shouting orders. Chief, Todd shouted. What? He snarled. Can't you see where... Let me talk to them. Give me a megaphone so I can negotiate. They don't want to negotiate, Edwards. They're gonna... I know, Todd shouted back, but we need time. We still can't get a signal out for reinforcements in time. Radios are dead and the power's out. Nearest officers won't arrive for another. Reinforcements are coming, Todd hissed, lowering his voice so only the chief could hear it, over the bustle of returning fire. Bolton stared at Todd a long moment, and a look of dread mixed with awe, and his glare was unmistakable. What's going on, Edwards? We're about to get backup. And a lot of it. The Tiger are coming.
And that was chapter 19. All right. We have time for one more chapter of any story. Well, except Tale of Tomiki. I still need to edit that. So what would you guys like to hear? Would you guys like to hear the next Shogun of Crime? The next Monster Club? Or the next... Well, we can't do Tempest Blade. So it's only one of two. Haha. Shogun of Crime... or Monster Club. Putting it to a vote. All right, let's see who won. I think that's plenty of time. 91% to 8%. All right. Let's do it. Chapter 21 of Shogun of Crime, written March 16th, 2024. Yeah, I wrote this in March of this year, believe it or not. Oh, wait, no, wrong one. Ha! Wrong one. Chapter 20. I meant to go to chapter 20, which was written in December 26th, 2022. All right, here we go. The streets were in a panic. Pedestrians fled the sidewalks and roads as 8 cars had now parked, blocking the streets and alleys around the precinct. A small army of men wearing grungy clothes were piling out of the vans and vehicles carrying submachine guns and bottles of alcohol with rags stuffed in their noses. A few were shouting in Chinese while others were lighting their cocktails to chuck through the windows. One of them was bald, wearing sunglasses by the overcast sky, and he had some degree of stubble on his chin. He was in charge of the operation. It was Donnie Chin himself, head of the Timberwolves Triad organization. He snarled up at the upper windows of the building, shouting a few things at his underlings, and all of them began working to launch the projectiles. "Chin!" a voice shouted from the third-story window. He was holding a megaphone, and as Donnie looked up, he could see a man leaning out with a megaphone to him. "I'm the one you want, Chin! I'm Officer Todd Edwards!" Chin's eyes widened. He hadn't expected his target to show his face so quickly. Was he being heroic and sacrificing himself for his fellow officers, or was this another trap? He couldn't be sure. "Officer Edwards," Chin called back. "You're awful brave to stick your head out like this." "Come on, Chin," Todd shouted back. "We both know you aren't going to shoot me." "Oh, no. You said it yourself. You're going to bleed me like a stuck pig. Afraid killing me is out of the question just now," Chin smirked. "So what are you proposing, officer? Are you willing to surrender yourself?" "That's certainly an option," Todd replied, "but seems risky." "Risky?" "Officer, you shot one of my boys outside of that safe house. You humiliated my men, and you've insulted us by hiding from us for so long. Look, I'm tired. I'm pissed off, and I'm not waiting on you to pull another trick. If you're not down here by the time I count to 10, I'm going to burn this damn building to the ground. That hardly gives me time to get to the stairs. Then start running. 1, 2, 3. Then I guess you don't want to know about the taiga," Todd offered. Chin stopped counting. "What do you know about the—" "I know lots, Chin," Todd shouted. "I know who they take orders from. I know their safe house locations. I know their business partners and which cartels are connected to them." Donnie Chin was already sweating with anticipation. Their biggest threat, the taiga, all their information from the mouth of one cop. It was too good to be true. "You're a lying pig," Chin shouted. "Am I?" Todd asked. "Would you like to risk that assumption? Because the taiga is way stronger than you think. You can't beat them without this intel." "Boss, we're running out of time," one of the Chin's underling whispered. "Fine," Chin shouted. "Get down here unarmed and we'll leave you pigs alone." "Glad we could do business. Tell your men to— Now!" Chin bellowed, firing off his handgun in the air to prove his point. Todd winced and pulled away. That was it. He'd played for as much time as he could. The officers around him all glanced at him, and he smiled encouragingly. "It's all good, guys." He set the megaphone down and started to walk to the stairs when suddenly his phone vibrated. Curiously, he pulled out his phone and saw that he'd gotten a text from her. "Close the windows." He didn't wait to ask. He didn't even have time to. A sudden feeling in his gut told him that this was not the time to second-guess orders. "Close the windows," he shouted. "Close all of them, now!" His demands were loud and forceful. No one questioned him. No one argued. Some did stare, though, but eventually every officer had grabbed a window and slammed it shut. They didn't know why, but the urgency in Todd's voice was enough to get them all rolling. "What the hell are you doing?" Chief Bolton cried. "I don't know." "You don't know?" Bolton asked, getting hysterical. "All I know is that we're about to have reinforcements." Donnie Chin watched in confusion as various windows were suddenly shut. Something felt wrong to him, but he couldn't place the problem. He could smell a rat, yet where was this particular rat? Was it just a precaution to keep him from going back on his word? A means to keep the Molotovs from being thrown? "Boss!" one of the men shouted. "Look!" Chin turned and saw to his surprise a large dark van rolling up to him. His eyes widened. It was no police car, but it wasn't one of his. "Arm up!" he shouted. Every man turned their guns on the rolling van. It wasn't coming fast, just coasting like it was in no hurry. His men waited for the order to shoot it, but he waited. It'd be bad if he opened up on his own allies. After waiting, the van finally came to a halt just outside of their perimeter after bumping harmlessly into one of their own cars. One of the Timberwolves approached it and then paused. "Boss, there's no driver." The realization hit him like a cannon. "Run, damn it! Run!" The entire building rocked with the pressure wave of the car bomb. Bodies and car debris flew in all directions. The glass of the windows that had been shut rattled, and there were screams that echoed along the brick walls. Pieces of men and machine were thrown all around, and Todd was thrown to the floor, covering his head and his heart pounding. He crawled swiftly to a window, desperate to see what was going on. "Shit, Oichi, what have you done?" he hissed. Smoke filled the air and made it hard to see anything. Fire seemed to envelope everything that Donnie could see. As he staggered to his feet, the ringing in his ears made him stumble as he almost immediately threw up on the pavement beneath it. He coughed and sputtered as his ears bled terribly from the explosion. "Hey!" he roared. "What happened? Where?" 2 gunshots. 3. 10. 50. Uncountable gunshots as automatic weapons opened up all around. Any survivors from the car bomb were mowed down before Donnie's eyes. Screams of those gunned down rippled and sent him near to the point of soiling himself. He rolled fast and screamed as he cowered behind a large police vehicle, its body being peppered by bullet holes.
He covered his head, his mind trying to process the whole incident. How it had gone south. What had he not anticipated? He'd trapped Todd Edwards inside. His information had been airtight. He'd locked in the police. He'd cut the power. He'd made sure that they had at least 25 minutes to do what they needed. There was only one explanation, and the very thought sent a shiver down his spine. Another gunshot. Chin screamed as he felt a sharp and burning pain shoot through his leg. He roared with agony and hit the ground, clutching his bleeding leg where he'd been shot. He looked to see a few men in three-piece suits standing over him. Two had glasses on, while the other hand on a face mask and a pistol in his hand. "Found him, ma'am," the face mask man said proudly. "He's alive like you wanted." She walked out of the smoke like a phantom. She had on a black skirt suit with a white undershirt and blouse under it. Draping over her shoulders was a long trench coat with the sleeves swaying emptily. She had long black hair and an oriental face that was twisted in anger and disgust. Her high heels clicked with each step. This was her, the head of the taiga. She held out her hand as the masked man handed her the pistol he'd been carrying. Chin tried to puff up his chest. "What do you want, bitch? You here to bargain? You obviously didn't want me dead, so what do you want? Tell me!" Without a word, Oichi aimed her pistol and fired once into Chin's forehead. His head rocked back as his body hit the ground with a sick thud. She glared at the body and then handed the pistol back to the masked man who had given it to her.
"Toss it in one of the fires and let's go," Oichi hissed.
"But ma'am, why?"
her obedient officer began to ask. "I wanted to take his measure before I killed him. I was curious what kind of wolf would so brazenly and foolishly expose himself, letting his pride get away with him by surrounding a police building and laying siege to it for all of his wounded pride."
Oichi replied darkly as she marched away, back towards the inferno from which she'd come.
"But in the end, I had nothing to say. When all is said and done, there are no words needed when taking out the garbage."
The smoke and fire had become too thick for anyone looking out the window to see anything that happened. But Todd had seen a few cars pull away from the wreckage, all unmarked and manned by people who were careful to keep themselves hidden. He didn't need to wonder who was in them. He knew who they were. As he stepped back, he felt his phone vibrate. Another text.
"I'm sorry, Todd."
Todd read the text in surprise, but also somber acceptance. He thought she'd write to say that Donnie Chin was dead or that it was safe, but instead just an apology. He sat down on the floor as cops ran back and forth to put out small fires and try to return the power. He texted back. "Are you all right?" he asked.
"None of this is all right, Todd," she answered.
Todd started to text his reply, but thought a moment. He couldn't say everything he wanted to like this. If his text could potentially be traced, he began to rephrase his text. What happened to the dog?
"I put him down."
He could feel the dispassionate frustration in her words. She didn't care one bit about the death of one of the most dangerous crime bosses in the city. She was more concerned about other matters.
"I'd rather not talk about that."
"I haven't forgiven you yet," he texted back. There was a long pause, and he thought for a moment that she wouldn't answer him, but sure enough, there came a reply.
"You shouldn't," she answered. "I didn't want to hurt you or use you, but I did. I can never make that right."
"Was it real?" Todd finally asked, breathing heavily. "Did you ever really love me?" The response was so fast, Todd felt his breath leave his body.
"Yes. With all of my heart, yes."
And that's the end of chapter 20.
All right. Well, that was fun. Really enjoyed that. We will pick a new story to replace Tempest Blade. I think we've only got 1 or 2 more chapters left in Shogun of Crime to read because I haven't finished the story. But we will get to those soon. Monster Club and Tomiki are still going strong, so look forward to that. I don't know if I'll stream tomorrow. Depends on how I'm feeling because I'm still feeling kind of out of it. But I'll let you guys know. As always, thank you guys so much for coming. Really enjoy doing this series. Hope you guys have a great rest of your Monday and a great Tuesday tomorrow. And as always, I will see you in my next video. Take care.